是的，看到我们丁松青丁神父他的故事之后，是不是相当的感人呢？他对着这一群泰雅族的原住民朋友们，真的是无怨无悔，而且对他们的照顾是无微不至的。在这里呢，我们也要跟他好好的学习。另外一位朋友，我们要为大家介绍，当然他也相当的有爱心哦。他是谁呢？他在美国可是有一个非常非常高薪的工作，他是一位律师，但是呢，他经常为一些贫苦的朋友打抱不平哦。所以即使是没有配也无所谓。所以今天我们要介绍这位朋友呢，他自己本身的名字叫做 Jim， 但是来到台湾呢，为什么会放弃高薪来到这里工作呢？我们就听听他是怎么说的。Hi Jim, nice to meet you.
Hello, nice to meet you too.
What kind of lawyer are you when you were still in the States?
Most of my work was for the poor. You know, in America they have lawyers appointed by the court or by the government to represent poor people, either in a criminal case or maybe something involving Social Security or welfare benefits, and I mostly represented poor people.
Is there a lawsuit that you won that you're especially proud of?
Well, yeah, of course, I was appointed to represent a man named Lonnie Roberts, and he was a kind of a bad guy, and he was charged with robbing a bank, and the people in the bank picked him out of a lineup. You understand what a lineup is? They put 5 or 6 people in a line, and they say, it's number 3. And the police officer that arrested him said that he confessed to the bank robbery in the car, said he needed the money to buy drugs. And, but when he talked to me, he said, I didn't do it. Of course, that's a kind of a common story. People will lie to their lawyers. But I believed that my job was to believe him, and I kept looking and I kept looking and I kept looking, and I finally found proof that he didn't do it, and quite surprised everybody, but he was innocent. He was a bad guy, the witnesses thought he did it, the police officer thought he confessed, but actually he was innocent.
So, how difficult is it in the procedure?
Very difficult. You know, Americans have legal rights, maybe more legal rights than a lot of countries. For example, a jury trial, and which is a legal right that Taiwan doesn't have, for example. But when everybody is against you, when the police are against you, and the government is against you, and the employees at the bank, the victims are against you, those legal rights don't seem so big after all. And I think that if Lonnie Roberts had had a lawyer that was a little bit lazier and didn't look quite so hard, he would have gone to prison for a crime he didn't commit.
So how did you find the proof after all?
Well, there were 14 people in the bank when the bank was robbed. And I talked to all of them, and finding them was very, very difficult. But when I finally did find all of them and got them to tell their stories, it was clear that Lonnie Roberts wasn't in the bank. Lonnie Roberts was very tall, and the bank robber was not. And everybody agreed that the bank robber was not as tall as Lonnie Roberts. Well, maybe you can make a mistake about a face, but you can't make a mistake about height. And the 14th witness really convinced the judge, because he said the bank robber's head went under a picture on the wall, and Lonnie Roberts' head went over the top of the picture. So
that's nice.
Yeah.
Why did you give up such a good job and come to Taiwan?
Well, being a lawyer is a good job, but it's very, very stressful. There's no chance to correct your mistakes. I haven't been a lawyer for 14 years, but sometimes in the middle of the night I will wake up dreaming about cases that are 20 years ago. Teaching is not stressful. Teaching is very rewarding. It's a really happy job, and it's much better on my personality and my well-being.
What's your deepest impression for Taiwan?
Well, I guess that if I had to use one word, I would use hardworking. People in Taiwan are always working. Work, work, work. In the last few years, more and more people in Taiwan have begun to see the reason for relaxing and socializing and having a little more fun. But I guess if I had to use one word, it would be hardworking.
What do you do in the law firm?
Most of the work involves reading and writing and explaining contracts involving international trade. Companies either want to do business in Taiwan, or companies in Taiwan want to do business elsewhere in the world. And the language of international trade is English. So mostly it's explaining, reading, and writing contracts.
What's the most common case that you face in Taiwan?
Well, the biggest problem is that contract law doesn't have a long tradition in China. 100 years ago, people didn't go to court to settle their contract differences. The leaders of the families would get together and they would negotiate it. So the biggest problem is explaining to Taiwan businessmen that the promises in the contract are real promises, and they can't just write some words and then forget about them. They have to really think about what the promises are.
Yes. Why is it so easy to cause this kind of problem?
Well, I really think that it's a question of cultural tradition. Taiwanese businessmen are just as honest as American businessmen, just as dishonest. And no difference between them in that respect. But I think that the Taiwanese business people think that if there's a problem, they can talk their way out of it. And that's not the case. When you sign a multi-million-dollar contract with IBM and there's a mistake in the words, you cannot talk your way out of it. You have to make sure the words are right. And that's the most common problem that we have, is that in America, a business would go to the lawyer before they sign the contract. In Taiwan, many times people bring us the contract they already signed and say, what does it mean? And that's the problem.
I guess they have to get used to how to read a contract and try to go to a lawyer before they sign it, right?
That's right. That's right.
Can you tell us what's your opinion for Taiwanese conception for obeying the laws?
Well, I'll tell you, when I first got here, I don't think people did have much respect for the law. They felt like if they had guanxi, they could get rid of any problems. And if they didn't have guanxi, they were in trouble. So there wasn't any real respect for the law. But in the last 12 years, with more and more democratic systems and with politicians paying attention to their voters, and the elected officials realizing that if they don't do a good job, they won't be elected again, more and more people in Taiwan have respect for the law. And a really good example of this, as you may know, is that several years ago in Taipei, they passed a law requiring everybody that rides a motorcycle to wear a helmet. And almost everybody predicted that this law would fail. Nobody will wear a helmet in Taiwan. This is ridiculous. But if you go out on the streets today and look, you'll see even the babies have helmets. And that's really a big change for Taiwan in terms of respect for the law. If you allow people to elect their own governments, they will respect the laws passed by those governments, I think.
Because I guess after a few tickets, you will realize that you have to wear helmets, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. I really don't know if that's the key. Maybe it's just law enforcement. But I do think that the people in Taiwan are beginning to realize that the government belongs to them, and that the laws that the government passes are the laws that they are involved in, and they have to obey them.
Any other things happen that affect your opinion for this?
Well, one of the things, you know, when I first got here, I did mostly teaching, but I began to do more and more work with the law in the morning. And at the beginning, people in Taiwan didn't want to know how to write a real contract. They just wanted to know how to get out of contracts. More and more people in Taiwan today want to just get a good contract in the beginning. They understand that if they want to do business in the global economy, they have to learn how to do that.
我们休息一下，广告后再回来听听 Jim 在台湾还做些什么。In foreign countries, I always say that first is the rules, the laws, then the logic, and the last is affection. But in Taiwan, it's not the same. Can you talk about this?
Well, I think that there certainly are a lot of cultural differences, but I think more than that, people are people. I find that the people in Taiwan care about the law and care about logic, and they also care about affection. One of the big differences between the legal culture in Taiwan and America is that contracts between two Chinese often result in maybe there's a problem, and instead of arguing about their rights, they usually try to figure out how to solve the problem. Maybe in America, people would argue about their rights more. And sometimes when there are contracts between Chinese people and American people, these two different feelings cause disagreement and misunderstanding. One of the interesting things that I do in the law office is that I try to explain that difference to both sides.
Since you're a lawyer, you're supposed to put the rules, the laws, and be in front of everything. Because you're supposed to stand for justice, isn't it? So.
Well, first of all, I'm not a lawyer now.
But you were.
Yes, I was. I was a lawyer until 1985. Even when I was a lawyer, one of the jobs of a lawyer is to make the rules benefit the person that they're working for. And you know, we think that the law is kind of like a computer program. You put in the facts and out comes the answer. That's not really true. The law is full of human feeling and human ideas. For example, I was just reading a book about assisted suicide. Your father is elderly, he's dying of cancer, he's in a lot of pain, and you, maybe with the help of the doctor, you help him die. Well, according to the rule, that's not allowed. But I think we understand that. It's real. And in many cultures and in many places, there's an argument about whether it's right or wrong. And the argument's pretty much the same in America that it would be in China.
Yes, I agree. Talking about human feelings, we know that when you were still in the States, you sometimes take some homeless people back to your house, provide them a shelter, some food, maybe lend them some money. Why did you do that?
Well, I don't want to sound like a saint. I'm not a saint at all. Let me just give you one example. I was asked by the court to represent a girl who had no family. And she was staying in a foster home provided by the state because she had no family. She ran away from that place, and some men on the street found her, and they wanted to make her a prostitute. And they beat her up, and the left side of her face was bloody and black and bruised. And I found her, and I said, you have to go back to the foster home. And she said, I won't live there. And I said, okay, you have to come home with me. And she trusted me, and she lived with me for my ex-wife, now ex-wife, and 2 children for about 1.5 years. When she was 18 and able to take care of herself, she left. I think most people would do something like that.
So you just think that you can do a little things to help them, so you do it?
Sure.
Do you do the same thing in Taiwan?
Well, the situation that happens in Taiwan that I've been involved with is Americans that get hurt in an accident, and they've been working here, but they haven't saved very much money, and they don't have medical benefits. And yeah, I'll loan them some money or give them some money. And I guess that if it was me, they would do the same.
Americans cares about their own rights a lot, so they sometimes organize groups and then try to affect the laws through the community. But in Taiwan, we don't often see this kind of situation. So can you give Taiwanese some suggestion?
Well, actually, we have been seeing more and more of that. I arrived in Taiwan in 1987, just at the end of martial law. Before that, it was pretty dangerous to organize political groups. You could get in trouble. And after the martial law was lifted, it was still uncomfortable. People were still afraid. But these days, I see the members of an apartment house organizing to complain to the government that the builder did a bad job, or people going to the government to complain that the flood control is not very good. So I think the people in Taiwan have figured it out themselves. I'm very, very impressed by how quickly the people in Taiwan have learned democratic procedure and organizing.
Other than working in the law firm, what do you do?
I teach English.
You teach English and
at the English Bridge School, and we teach adults and children, mostly children.
What's the most different things between being a lawyer and a teacher?
Well, the way I'm working the law, there isn't a lot of difference. I really do teach at the law office. Maybe I teach law or teach culture, but I spend a lot of time trying to teach people things about China or about America, or about how to express themselves in English, or the differences between the 2 cultures. In fact, even when I was a lawyer in America, I really feel like I was a teacher. You go to court, and what you're trying to do is to teach the judge the right way to answer the question.
So, after all, which one do you like better?
I like teaching a lot better than being a lawyer. Being a lawyer is a very stressful job. If you make a mistake when you're a lawyer, maybe someone will go to prison or lose their house. If you make a mistake when you're teaching, you can fix it tomorrow. It's not so serious. So yeah, I like teaching a lot better.
You can say sorry when you make a mistake, but you can't say sorry in the court.
That's right, that's right.
Do you have a special way to teach, like your teaching philosophy?
Yeah, well, the English Bridge School uses a completely no Chinese method. There's no Chinese in the classroom at all. A lot of people in Taiwan learn English by translation. They learn that this English word means that Chinese word, or this Chinese word means that English word. That's not a very good way to teach. For example, you probably have noticed that sometimes when you say, "How are you?" to Chinese, they will say, "How are you?" back. Americans never do that.
Yes.
The reason that the Chinese speakers say, "How are you?" back is that they think they're saying "Ni hao ma." And very often when they're speaking Chinese, they say "Ni hao, ni hao." So, how are you? How are you? But Americans never do that. The translation is wrong. And a lot of mistakes in English in Taiwan are caused by the translation method. You also probably notice that some people in Taiwan speaking English will say, "My mother, he is beautiful." Right? You heard this mistake?
Yes.
That's because they're using ta. They're thinking ta. And ta is he, she, and it. And they don't care which one. So they'll say, "My father, she," or "My mother, he." Our children and our adults here learn to say she, he, she, he, without any translation or Chinese. So they don't make that mistake.
So it's better and easier to start to learn English when you're still a child.
Yes, of course. First of all, if you learn a foreign language when you're young, then your pronunciation will be correct. It's very, very hard to learn correct pronunciation when you're an adult. The mouth gets more fixed in its ways. Children can make all the sounds. Another advantage of teaching children compared to adults is they're mentally more flexible. Adults have fixed ideas about things. Children can learn. I can tell you a kind of funny story about that. I went to an English school here in Taiwan many years ago, and I demonstrated, and the teacher and the owner of the school really liked my teaching style, so they offered me a job. And while we were filling out the papers, the owner of the school asked me where I studied Chinese. And I said, "I don't know how to speak Chinese." And he said, "How can you teach English if you can't speak Chinese?" And I said, "My mother taught me English, and my mother doesn't speak Chinese." And after a second, he started to laugh and realized that the natural way of learning a language is in the language.
Yes. Thank you, Jim. Thank you very much to have this interview with us.
You're
We're very
welcome.
glad that you can share these feelings with us.
That's
Yes.
wonderful. It was my
Thank you.
pleasure. You're welcome.
我认识Jim已经有10年了。那他是一个很有创意的人，那很特别的一个人。他做事情上面，尤其在教学方面非常非常的幽默。我们这边几乎每一个小朋友家长都很喜欢他，很多因为慕他的名而来这里。那他看到他对小孩子非常有爱心，看到每个小孩子他都会很主动去跟他们打招呼。他就连你看像一个大胡子的一个男人，可是他在看电影的时候常常会哭出声来，而且哭得非常大声。那还有他有一个很大的特性是，每一个人看到他，不管什么时候看到他，他手上都一定有这一本书。他看书的量非常非常的大，一天要看3、4份以上的报纸，大概1、2本左右的杂志，那一本小说，所以他除了在教学方面，他在个人的充实方面也非常非常的够。那我们很高兴能够有这样一个老师来在慧侨作为我们的班主任。那我也很高兴能够认识像这样一个很好的良师益友。
好，看完了我们的 Jim 的故事，我们也可以感受到他在我们台湾的生活呢，已经相当的适应了。而且他自己本身现在除了白天的工作呢，晚上呢他就是教英文，所以呢这2份工作带给他是非常充实的台湾的生活。那当然在这个工作当中呢，我们可以看得出来，如果你的英文老师像 Jim 一样的活泼开朗幽默的话，相信你的英文一定也会学得非常的好。所以今天呢，我们看到2位非常有爱心的朋友，所以希望大家也可以好好的跟他们的精神学习一下。记得哦，我们老外在台湾，我们下一次再见喽，拜拜。